Hello everyone, welcome back to another Commander review for Magic the Gathering. Ooh, I'm speaking too fast. My brain can't comprehend. If you're watching this right now, and you've been watching my other videos, just to give you some context about how rattled my brain is, I just got done playing the latest giant recording session of Gran Turismo 4. And it's been a lot. If you've been watching that series, you know where I'm at right now, and you know how my brain is struggling at the moment. But with that set aside, Braids Cabal Minion is the commander from Odyssey that we're talking about today. Braids is, of course, a legendary human minion. It's a 2/2. It costs 2 generic mana and 2 black mana. And it reads, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player sacrifices an artifact, creature, or land. That's not a May ability either, so they have to sacrifice those things every one of their upkeeps. Very insane. So we actually do have some rules for this, but first off, right off the bat, this card is banned in the Commander format as of right now. At least as of this recording, it is banned. So if you play with this as your commander, make sure you're playing in like a casual setting with your friends who are aware of what you're doing. And the rules with this card are a little bit interesting, so I'm going to read it, and then I'll see if I can remember exactly how it works. So at the beginning of your upkeep, triggered abilities you control will resolve after triggered abilities your opponents control. If an opponent controls Braids and you control a triggered ability that puts a permanent onto the battlefield, you won't be able to sacrifice that permanent to satisfy Braids' ability. So what this is essentially describing is how the stack works, and more importantly, how priority of the stack works. To kind of give a visual representation of what this is saying, if I'm the player that controls Braids and it's my turn, Braids trigger goes on the stack, and then your trigger goes on the stack on top of Braids. So your trigger will resolve first, and then Braids. So you make a token up here, you can sacrifice it to Braids. However, if it's your turn, and you have the trigger that makes a token, I am next in line, so Braids will go on top of the stack, because you started on your turn, and then my Braids trigger goes on the stack next in turn order, which means my Braids trigger resolves before you can make the token. So hopefully that is kind of a good visualization of stacking based on priority. Hopefully that makes sense to you guys. Let me know in the questions below if that doesn't, but that's just explaining the stack for Braids' ability. Alright, card to synergize with Braids, you can do a slew of different upkeep triggered things that make tokens every turn. Dreadhorde Invasion was one of the cheaper, not just mana but also monetary wise cheaper outlets that you could use for this. But at the beginning of your upkeep, you can stack your triggers how you want them, so you can have it so Dreadhorde Invasion resolves first to make that token, and then Braids will come up and you can then sacrifice that token. The deck that I am building Braids around, and Braids of course is not the I actually have built this deck. I totally forgot. I've actually played with this deck. I've even played with Braids as the commander. This deck is all about edicts. It's all about everyone sacrificing everything, and of course my deck is to outvalue my opponents as far as sacrifice fodder. So every time I sacrifice something, they sacrifice an extra something, so on and so forth. Very powerful aristocrat edict style deck, and it's very oppressive. You will be targeted with this deck. A popular deck idea on EDH Rec really just hones in on that edict effect, where my deck kind of just has a lot of everyone sacrifices something. The traditional edict effect really is like you have tons of effects like Butcher of Malakir, Grave Pact, Dictate of Erebos that say when you sacrifice a creature, everyone sacrifices a creature. This is your more traditional aristocrat Edict style deck, where mine is a little bit more janky, and I'm trying to outvalue my opponents with the Edict effects. And lastly, I thought it'd be interesting to try and do something a little bit different with Braids, but it's kind of difficult to do something with Braids because of how oppressive it is as a commander. So unless you're trying to build like a low-powered deck, and I know that the system for grading deck levels is changing or has changed, so we're not doing the 1 to 10 scale, we're doing like a 1 to 4 scale kind of thing. I'm not exactly sure how that works out, but either way, unless you're trying to build Braids as like a level 1 deck, it's going to be really hard to build a deck that's not oppressive with Braids. Even if you're doing something like Super Friends, so you don't have to sacrifice your Planeswalkers because of Braids. It doesn't have Planeswalkers in its rules text, so you don't have to sacrifice Planeswalkers, but you can make tokens and benefit from those tokens dying with Lolth, with Liliana, and of course more Edict synergies. This is a very Edict specific commander. And that's going to do it for Braids Cabal Minion. Everyone's going to lose everything, and everyone's going to be mad at you for it, so be prepared. It's very oppressive, very powerful. I can see why this card is banned, but obviously with how evolved this game is, there's plenty of ways to remove Braids or deal with Braids or even outvalue Braids if you're like in a token deck. And of course, since Braids is banned, on top of everything else, that's probably why it's at the D ranking on the tier list that we'll be seeing in a few episodes. But aside from that, very cool. And again, I have played with Braids as the commander. It is a very strong card. And unless a player is lucky or is built around it, 9 times out of 10, they will slowly just fall more and more behind because of the oppression that is the Edict effect. Sacrificing something every turn is very rough. So make your opponents angry at you, lose all your friends, and then tell me in the comments below how it went. My goodness, this card is cool. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!